Yeah. Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Let's get it. Pro Fan. Tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam. Sean on the mic, very flat too. Keep you updated, that's what we do. Pro Fan. Tune into the program. Pro Fan. Tune into the program. Pro Fan. Tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam.
Yo, what to do, everybody? It's your boy, John Altidor with Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Back at you with my boys, Vlad and Barry. Barry will be on here shortly. And welcome back to the show. Writer and digital producer at 98.5 The Sports Hub, Alex Barth, man. Welcome back to the show. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming back, man. We really appreciate that. You know, I guess we didn't do too bad the last time you were on here.
I remember it being a good time. So there you go.
Absolutely, man. So I know you're just coming off, a heartbreaker in the Celtics and Golden State finals there. How are you feeling about that?
I mean, it's overall encouraging, you know, for the Celtics to finally get to that stage. And I think the Warriors were the better team. I picked the Warriors going into that series. So they've got work to do. The Celtics, certainly. I think they can be better than they are. But first time in a couple of years, it felt like they've really made progress. The last couple of years kind of felt like they took steps backwards. Hard to say that after this season.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think we can all agree that the Celtics took a step forward. We took advantage of some stuff. We didn't make it any easier on us going to 7 games to get into the finals. And I think some of that fatigue from the 7-game series, caught up to us there at the end. But, we came 2 games, 4 minutes from being 3-1 up on the Golden State, and we just couldn't do it, man. And we came from 2 games into winning the finals, but we couldn't pull it off. And now it's the offseason, and, basketball is a year-round thing. And now we're talking about, is Jaylen Brown being appreciated enough, by the Celtics fans out here? How you feeling about that?
I love Jaylen Brown. I think a couple years ago, like his first 2 years, I think he was feeling things out. When he went into his 3rd year, I thought he transformed the way he played the game, his approach. And I think it just, shot his stock through the roof. I think he's been excellent. Now, would I trade him for Kevin Durant? Kevin Durant's a top 3 player in the league. He might be a top 10 player all time. So, I no disrespect to Jaylen Brown. Kevin Durant, he's probably the only player I trade him for. But I love Jaylen. I'd love to see him, play his whole career in Boston. But I think if you can get Kevin Durant, kind of have to do what you have to do, right?
Are you going to do Jaylen Brown straight for Kevin Durant, or are you going to give up other pieces as well?
I don't know that I'm giving up much more. I mean, I think you need to give up like another player to match salary, whether it's like Daniel Tice or, somebody like that. But I don't know that I'm adding, picks or
Marcus Smart.
No, not Marcus Smart, not picks, not like maybe Aaron Nesmith, sure, fine, but nothing major. If you're getting Jaylen Brown, you're getting, 26, 27-year-old budding star. I think that's a pretty solid return for a team that has no draft picks and no direction. Sounds like now they're going to keep it together because Kyrie's opting in. But I wouldn't have given up much more than that.
Well, so were those just rumors about Kyrie, or you think they were real conversations?
No, this was like 15, 20 minutes before we hopped on. Both Shams and Woj saying that Kyrie is opting into his deal, that last year of his deal, and they're going to give it another go. So we'll see.
So all trade talk for Kyrie, for Kevin Durant, all that is probably out of the water now.
I mean, you never know in the NBA, things can change like that, but it does seem like the Nets, as they're currently constituted, are going to give it one more kick at the can.
Yeah. All right.
One more kick. That's going to be interesting, man. Is he going to play more than 35 games this year? Because I don't understand, I mean, I don't know what to make of Kyrie. It's like, You know, after the first year, the first initial years, like everything goes down the drain with him, and he just drains the media, drains everybody he comes around, man. You know, and don't you think it's strange that Kevin Durant is like, no, I'm gonna stay out of this situation and not give any opinions about this?
I think Kevin Durant's a really smart guy, and I think he understands that at the end of the day, he's the guy, right? Kyrie's a tremendous basketball player on the floor, but Kevin Durant's Kevin Durant. He's on another level, and I think he understands that he doesn't have to play into it. He's going to get what he wants because he's the best player on the team. He's a top 3, top 5 player in the league. Yeah, you know, he's. I think he kind of knows that they'll he wanted Kyrie to stay. That was reportedly what was out there. So he kind of knows if he tells the Nets what he wants, one way or the other, they're going to have to give it to him or somebody else will. So I think he's handled this all very well, and credits him for that.
Right. I mean, you can't really put a blame on him, right? Hey, I wasn't talking to anybody this whole time, you know. Report says I haven't spoken to the Nets in weeks now, so it has nothing to do with me. I mean, it'll be interesting.
Did y'all see the pictures of Dame and Kevin going around Twitter and stuff like that?
I saw that. Dame,
Yeah.
that on his IG story.
We did it. Somebody else tweeted it, and I was like, "Yo, what's up with that?"
I mean, I'd be into that. Like, I'm a big Damian Lillard guy. I love the way he plays the game. He's awesome. I'd love to see him get a ring. Him and Durant, it's gonna be tough to beat that team. And you know they could lure a third star out there once they get that duo going. So I don't know how realistic it is. I don't know what Portland has to trade, but that'd be a fun team. That'd be worth staying up till 1 a.m. That team would be worth staying up till 1 a.m. to watch on the West Coast.
Especially those West Coast games.
Yeah.
That's actually something I didn't even think about. When I seen that, I'm like, man, that would be a pretty killer duo out there, man. And I think they could definitely step up to Golden State out there, you know. Yeah, but enough about those guys, man. Any thoughts on what the Celtics need to do, in the offseason?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is bench scoring, and Brad Stevens talked about this. I think they need a consistent, a microwave scorer off the bench, a guy who can come in cold, still hit shots, a guy you can trust with the high volume of shots relative to his minutes on the floor. The term true point guard's gotten thrown around a lot too. And I know some people are, well, what's a true point guard? What do you need? Blah, blah, blah. I think they need a distributor. I think they need a guy who doesn't want to shoot, who's looking to pass, who's a good passer. And that's not to replace Marcus Smart. I think, to move everybody down where it's you get, a true point at the 1. That could be a number of guys. Tyus Jones, a guy I like, the best assist-to-turnover ratio in the NBA over the last 4 years. I think Ricky Rubio would make a ton of sense if they can get him, guys like that. A guy like that at the 1, Marcus Smart at the 2, Tatum and Brown are your forwards, and then Rob's your big. And, you probably have to move Horford to get either the scorer or the distributor to match salaries. That's a really good lineup. That's not just a ton of talent in that lineup. That's a lineup that can do a lot of things and can win games in a lot of different ways, which is important. So those are kind of the 2 ads. I'd like to see him get another big too, just so Robert Williams doesn't have to play as many minutes in the regular season. And, they might have that guy. I think it's Travion Williams, right, from Purdue. They signed to join the Summer League.
Yeah. He's
I think, he doesn't need to be a star. But I think he's a guy who could play 15 minutes a night in the regular season, will be sustainable. And then when you get to the playoffs, I don't know that he's in the rotation, but that's less minutes Robert Williams has played in the regular season, which is only good. So whether it's him, whether it's another big, it's just kind of something I'd like to see from them. So those are kind of the 3 boxes I'd like to see them check. The first 2 are much more, have much more prevalence than the third. But I think it's all doable. It's not necessarily you snap your fingers to get it done. You got to be creative a little bit, but I don't think those are unrealistic asks. And I think if they do that, you add in the natural growth from Tatum and Brown and Smart that you hope is coming, and maybe a guy like Aaron Nesmith, if he can find his shot, then you're in pretty good shape.
Shooter, right? Like he said.
Well, so he was, and then he lost it last year. And when we talked to him, at the end of the season, he said, the shots are still going in practice. It's a mental thing. And he thought that just being able to step away from the game for a month or 2 might help him. if he can find his shot, and he showed tremendous growth as a defender in the windows he got last year, he could totally be a rotational player. So he's a guy I think is a guy you really look at when next season gets underway. Grant Williams, can he continue to grow, and can he be more consistent in the growth he showed last year? I think that's a big one. If those two guys can really be players, I think you're in really good shape.
You mentioned something I want to touch on. It sounds like in order to get another bench player that's gonna score, we might have to deal Al Horford, and I guess I'm worried about that because I feel as though Horford plays such an important role in the team getting so far, and I guess my question is around: do you think those guys are ready to step up and not need that leadership from Al Horford from a veteran? Do you think those guys are veteran enough to lead themselves? Because I just feel as though with Al Horford in the mix, those guys had a lot to play with, and he led by example. As we all know, he's not the loudest guy on the team, but he leads by example, right? And he brought that far. So do you think we'll need his presence next year to get as far as we did this year?
I don't think you trade Al Horford lightly. A lot of what you just said, his leadership role, him being a mentor to a lot of these guys, I think that's important. But he's not going to be here forever, right? And he's, because of the NBA matching salaries thing, if you really want to get a guy who can be a difference maker, whether it's, in a sign and trade or just in a regular trade, you're probably going to need to move his contract without disrupting the core. If you're not moving out, you're starting to talk about Marcus Smart. And I think to add the elements this team needs, X's and O's wise, I think you have to take the risk that it's time to move out. And look, maybe you find the right situation where it's a team that's looking to begin a rebuild and they buy Al out and you can bring him back. That's not unheard of either. But whether that's the case or not, that contract is so valuable the way the NBA is structured. I think to add the kind of player they need to add, you have to make that move, and you just trust that a trip to these finals got these guys where they need to be mentally, where they don't need that veteran leader anymore.
Let me throw a name at you. I just saw Bleacher Report. John Collins.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. I mean, he's been linked to the Celtics for a couple of years now, right? At the deadline, we hear about him. I still rather see them add in the backcourt. I trust them to add a big body with maybe a lesser investment and just develop that player. I mean, look what they did with Rob, right? I wouldn't be mad if they got John Collins. I just don't like it feels like they'd have to give up a lot to get him. And I don't think he fills their biggest needs right now. Are you going to play him if you trade for him, he's going to have to play a prominent role. Are you putting him on the floor with Rob? Well, that's really going to constrict the paint. That's going to be tough, right? It's going to make it tough to kick or to drive and either drive and kick or drive and score. Are you going to play him on the second unit? Well, is your best second unit an interior? Is your best player on the second unit an interior player? Are you giving up too much for him to be a second unit guy? So I really like the player. I think John Collins can play. If they didn't have Rob, or I'll say this, if they don't feel confident in Rob's ability to stay healthy, I think making a move for John Collins makes a ton of sense. If Rob's going to be a part of the big picture, I just think the assets it would take for you to get John Collins would be better spent elsewhere. They could make worse moves. Like, I don't think it would be the worst move if they got him, but I think they're maybe, I don't want to say selling themselves short, but I think they can get more with what they would have to give up to get Collins. I think they could get a guy who would maybe fill a need a little bit more.
Yeah, I definitely agree, man. I mean, it's gonna be a long offseason. We're just starting with the Celtics, man. So things are gonna get rolling soon with the NBA. But I wanted to move on to what we got coming up next here, which is the team we love to talk about, the Patriots, and what they got going on. They recently had the mandatory mini camp, right? And they canceled the last few practices. I guess, everybody's doing great. I don't know. I guess the team's ready to roll in September. You know, like y'all just take the rest of the practices off. You know, you heard everything about Mac Jones. You know, he's taking, you know, charge of the offense, and he looks like he's on another level. And I know you pay attention to all these things going on. What are you thinking about the Patriots and their offseason?
Yeah, you know, it's not totally uncommon for teams to cancel practices at the end of the spring. The Patriots weren't the only team to do it. You know, the Bears did it. I think the Cowboys did it. The Giants did it. Actually, the Bears didn't cancel. They lost picks. They had a practice violation last year. But it's, you know, it's not uncommon. And the philosophy behind it is, you know, would you rather run two practice? Nobody's practicing at 100% this time of year. You can't wear pads. But would you rather have two practices at 70% or three practices at 40%? And those two mini camp practices they had, to me, and I have been covering the team for that long. This was my fourth spring, but those were as rigorous mini camp practices as I've ever seen. Like they were really putting work and they were really getting a lot accomplished. I'll take that trade-off. I'd rather have two good practices than three whatever throwaway practices, right? So, you know, I felt good about that. You mentioned Mac. When it comes to him specifically, I think there was a lot to be encouraged about. I think he's trusting himself more to throw the ball. I thought, and again, this is in non-padded practices, so we have to see if this continues. I'm not necessarily saying him doing this in the spring is indicative that he'll do it once the regular season starts, but I thought he was testing windows a little bit more. I thought he was a little more willing to use more of the field, throw outside the numbers, and just the overall confidence, right? And Scott Zolak from the Sports Hub kind of touched on this, that, you know, he said it reminded him of Brady, and I think that the comment got taken out of context. He wasn't saying Brady as in like Tom Brady, TB12 the GOAT. It's just a starting quarterback. You know, if you go back to this time last year, Mac wasn't even the starter. Cam was here, and Mac really had to walk a tightrope where we all know he's the future. But he you know, Cam is Cam. He's a league MVP. He's been to a Super Bowl. He's been in this league for a decade. You can't kind of shove him out of the way and say, hey, it's my team. The way Mac handles himself with the receivers, with the entire offense, with the coaches, the way he handled himself in the huddle, there was just a sense of belonging, like this was his team, right? And sometimes you don't see that from guys right away. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 years for them to, you know, for starting quarterbacks to really become that starting quarterback, that mentality of it. And second year in the league, first year as the starter, it felt like he was owning that. Some of the chemistry, and not just like the passing chemistry, but, you know, the handshakes with the guys and the way he's coaching them up and letting them coach him up and these interactions, the interpersonal part of the game. It feels like he's been with some of these receivers for 3, 4, 5 years, and that's obviously not the case. So does that, you know, how does that translate to him being a top 5 statistical quarterback this season? Not necessarily, but is it encouraging in terms of his development and the offense's development? Absolutely. So when it comes to, you know, you can't do football takeaways without pads. You really can't do it. But that is something at minicamp, just watching how guys interact. I think that's an important takeaway, and it's encouraging. I'm not going to say it's the be-all, end-all. I'm not going to say Mac Jones is going to be great because him and Kendrick Bourne have a great handshake, but it's a lot better than him giving them the cold shoulder, right? He seems to be confident, and confidence will go a long way in this league, so that's exciting to see.
Yeah, I think, you know, Tom Brady, he's just getting into the social media the last couple of years, and he's doing it well. But Mac, you know, he grew up in the social media era, and I've definitely been paying attention to a lot of the stuff that he's doing, and he definitely seems a lot close. I mean, he's young, you know, he's close in age with all these receivers. And, you know, like you're talking about the handshakes, and I see him doing stuff in the offseason. You know, they're traveling and, you know, they're going to Celtics games. And it does seem like those guys have a really good camaraderie. And everything you read about him, you know, the players keep talking about the swagger that he has, you know, and I've seen him in a couple of videos this year. And I'm like, yo, this dude might have some stuff there, you know. Obviously he gives you the vanilla answers when the media is talking to him when he's, you know, at Patriot Place and
right.
stuff like that, so he's not going to give us everything. But, the stuff that you see Kendrick Bourne, putting out there on IG and stuff like that, you definitely see that personality and, going back to the Pro Bowl where he's doing the gritty and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely excited to see what Mac does in his second year. We had the draft, and obviously, there's a lot went on with the draft, and a lot of people in New England had a lot to say, about the draft and Cole Strange and what's his name, Taekwon, that we got.
Thornton, yeah.
Thornton, yep. I know watching you in the Patriots press pass with a dude over there, there's a lot of criticism, going on there. Rightfully so, because a lot of these picks, it's like, who the fuck is that guy? Did your opinion change any since, minicamp started and you've been doing your research more on these players?
So I think Evan was more critical than I was.
Evan's real critical.
Yeah, that's why we work well together. He keeps me in check. The one guy, I don't want to say my opinion changed. Well, yeah, it changed. The one guy really, getting to see Jack Jones in person, a lot of the finer points of his game maybe don't show up on tape. I thought, the way he's able to move, not just straight line speed, but the way he can change direction, turn his hips, like things that you need to do to be a boundary corner in the NFL. I think it showed up much more in person than it did on tape. When they took him, I kind of thought, I guess, high floor, low ceiling. I thought they'd go with maybe more of a high ceiling corner. Some of the guys that were on the board, Josh Jobe, Jalen Moore Davis, Tariq Woolen. But I saw him in person. It's like, oh, okay. So that one more so. My overall view of the draft is still what it was when it all wrapped up. The goal of the NFL draft is to add good football players to your team. I believe for the most part they did that. The question is going to be, could they have added better players? And we've done this before. New England loves to do this with all the sports. It's the anniversary of the Bruins 2015 draft when they had the 3 first-round picks in a row, blew them all, and then Matt Barzal was the next pick, perennial all-star, right? I like to trade down from 22 to 29, but Cole Strange goes to, or 21, 29, and then Cole Strange goes, and then it's like Dax Hill was the next player. I really like Dax Hill. I think Dax Hill's a guy whose career we're going to follow in New England and compare it to Cole Strange. When you look at Taekwon Thornton, a couple wide receivers that went after him, George Pickens, Sky Moore, we're going to follow those careers. I'm not saying for sure that Thornton was the wrong pick. I understand why they made that pick in the spot they made it. But there's a very convenient comparison there. That's my big takeaway. I don't necessarily think any of the picks are bad. There's certain ones I prefer to others. I really liked the Marcus Jones pick. I really liked the Pierre Strong pick. I honestly liked the Bailey Zappi pick. I know some people freaked out about them taking a quarterback there. That's one where if they were going to take a quarterback in that spot, I understand why they did it. There were some rough quarterbacks on the board who I think were overhyped. Sam Howell stands out, right? The kid from North Carolina, who some people thought would be a fringe first-round pick. They passed on him for Zappi. That was the right pick. If you're going to take quarterback in that spot, they took the best quarterback on the board. So, there's some of that. It's just I like the players they took, but they might have passed on some better players, and we'll have to wait and see how that goes out. But at the same time, too, the one I always go back to, I remember the 2010 draft, right? Everybody thought they needed a receiver. Randy Moss was it seemed like on his way out, or he might have been gone at that point, or that, and they were struggling to find somebody else. And Dez Bryant was there, and some people thought Dez, he's great college player. Some people got a little aggressive, called him the next Randy Moss. I think at the time had spoken highly of the Patriots, all of that. Oh my God, they need a wide receiver. There's this generational receiver who's going to fall. It's going to be awesome. And they passed. They passed on Dez Bryant to take Devin McCourty. And Dez Bryant comes out, has a great first couple of years. McCourty struggles at corner, and it's, they blew it. They blew it. Look at the player Dez Bryant is, and they have to move Devin McCourty's position. And now you go ahead. Des Bryant's been out of the league for a couple of years. Devin McCourty's still going. He's one of the best safeties in the league. He has been for over a decade. They might have, if they take Des Bryant, do they have 6 rings? I mean, I don't want to put all on Devin McCourty, but Devin McCourty's been a big part of what they've done for a long time. So that's an extreme example. But I think it could be something like that where it's going to take a couple years it always takes a couple years to evaluate the draft class. But I think this year especially, we're not going to know the big picture till 4 or 5 years from now.
Yeah. I was reading up stuff on Jack Jones, with why he fell where he did, and comparisons to the last corner. I don't know why I'm forgetting his name.
J.C. Jackson.
J.C. Jackson. He kind of had similar situations going on in college. Do you think the Patriots could start a rookie corner?
So I think they're going to rotate at that spot initially. I think he'll play. If he keeps doing what he did in the spring, I think you could look at like a 40-45% usage rate for him initially. I don't think he's going to be the starter. I don't think he's going to be the primary guy week 1. Now, if we get to December, Malcolm Butler's 32. He's got a lot of miles, And if Jack Jones is playing well, could that flip and Jack Jones becomes like a 65-70% usage rate guy, which is what their number 2 corner usually is? I could see it. I could definitely see it. We're a long way out to make those projections. We're not working with a ton of information. But with the information we do have in front of us, yeah, I think Patriots fans should be very encouraged by what Jack Jones has done. And he does look like a guy, again, I don't know, he's going to be like a 90% usage rate guy. Not in year 1. I think he can be down the road. I don't know if there's going to be 90% usage rate guy in year 1. Could he get up to 70 by the end of the year? Yeah. Could he be 90% by year 2? Yeah, I would totally believe that. He's got to keep developing. We'll see what happens when the pads come on, but he can't check every box yet because there's just things that he hasn't played a preseason game. He hasn't had a padded practice, but he's done everything to this point that you can ask him to do, and that's encouraging.
Yeah.
Devin McCourty started his rookie year.
He started at corner.
Yeah, he was like a borderline rookie of the year. He had a bunch of picks that year. He did. Now he was a first-round pick, and they historically, there's first-round picks, then there's everybody else. They treat the first-round picks very different.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an imperfect comparison, but yeah, there's not no history of it. I could see it. They've had other guys. Malcolm Butler played a somewhat significant role as a rookie behind Darrelle Revis and Brandon Browner, 2 all-pro caliber players. That's kind of the role I look at with Jack Jones. I don't think he's top 2 in the rotation, but I think the gap between whoever the number 2 corner is and him at number 3, I think that could be a relatively narrow gap.
Is a number 1 corner Malcolm Butler right now?
I think it's Jalen Mills. I think he showed enough last year. I think his best role is as a rover, where he's playing some outside corner, some slot corner, some safety. Unfortunately, they just don't have the depth at outside corner right now for him to move him around like that. He was good on the outside last year. I thought they really missed him at the end of the year against Buffalo. So I think at least for the time being, unless, Malcolm Butler and Jack Jones both start playing out of their mind, and then that frees you up to move Jalen Mills around. But I think right now Jalen Mills is your boundary corner number 1, and it's going to be that way at least, through September. And
another question I have is which side of the ball are you more curious about as training camp is coming up? I think we have some exciting players on offense, especially with the quarterback and the receivers, and just seeing hopefully how they can improve based on last year. But on defense, I don't know. I guess for me, I'm more curious about defense. Are we going to be able to force Buffalo to punt this year?
At least once.
Well, I think the defensive side of the ball is much more fascinating just because, the linebacker core is a total redo, right? Juwan Bentley's back, but that's it. We're finally going to get to see Josh Uche, Anthony Jennings, Ronnie Perkins, Cameron McGrone's now healthy. Raekwon McMillan's a guy I really liked last year. He tore his ACL after a strong start to camp. Somebody from it's put up or shut up time for those guys. There's no veterans in front of them anymore. It's one thing to not be able to beat out Kyle Van Noy, Dante Hightower, Jamie Collins for a starting role. Those guys are great players. Those guys aren't in front of them anymore.
Yeah.
And then even up front too, I think Matthew Judon, Christian Barmore is really good. 2 really good players. That's an excellent combo. But you're going to have 3 or 4 players on the defensive line. And that strong side last year, late in the season, teams just disregarded that strong side. And they were able to erase Judon on the weak side along with Barmore. They need somebody else to step up over there. Could be a defensive end, could be a linebacker. But there's so many personnel questions, and there's so many players who can win those spots. I just think it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. And then the secondary, too. Like we just talked about, what's going to go on with that second boundary corner spot. I think there's a ton of questions on the defensive side of the ball, and they should have the answers to them. We just don't know. It's too early to know. So I love what's going on that side of the ball. I think that's going to be fascinating during camp.
Yeah, I mean, Hightower's still not unsigned, but I've noticed he's kind of like stayed around New England a little bit, seeing him at Celtics games and stuff like that. One is Hightower somebody that could end up back on the team, and talk to me a little more about Cameron McGrone.
So Hightower, I think he could come back. He's a veteran. He didn't need the spring. I don't even know how much he needs the first couple weeks of camp. He's going to come back, be in shape if he comes back. I don't know that he's a 3-down middle linebacker anymore like he used to be, and I'm a huge Dont'a Hightower fan. I know some people are totally done with him. He's probably not a 3-down player anymore. But in his heyday, he wasn't playing middle linebacker. Like he was a dominant edge rusher too. They would move him all over the place. And you look at the role Kyle Van Noy played last year as that strong side edge setter, against the run and in some passing situations as well. I think that would be a role Dont'a Hightower could thrive in at this stage in his career. And they don't, there's guys who could win that role. I think Ronnie Perkins, Anthony Jennings are both guys who could fill that role. But if you want to throw a veteran in the mix, some people have, pointed out Trey Flowers. I don't think he's a bad option. I wouldn't be mad if they brought him in. But if it's between Flowers and Hightower, give me Hightower. He's been here more recently. Flowers has been banged up the last couple of years. Say what you will about Hightower. He played last year. He was on the field. So I wouldn't rule it out. I'm like 50-50 on it at this point. Just, speculating whether or not he'd come back. I'm not surprised he's not back yet. Again, I think he's fine, and the team's fine if he misses the beginning of camp. Cameron McGrone is a really interesting player because he's the kind of linebacker everybody's been clamoring for here that they haven't had. He's that coverage linebacker. He's smaller. He's like 230. He can move really well. He's not a guy who's going to play against the run a ton. He's not a guy you're going to send downhill. He's going to play east to west, sideline to sideline. He's going to contribute in coverage. He can spy the quarterback. He's more athletic. He's your, if you want to go thunder and lightning, he's more the lightning where Juwan Bentley's the thunder. Juwan Bentley's the thumper. He's going to come downhill. He's going to initiate contact, all that. Cameron McGrone, he's a money backer. He's like a hybrid safety. He's a guy who's going to play more free, play more in space.
Is he going to play like a nickel position or something, or?
No, I think he'll be a middle linebacker, but it's going to look a little different. I don't think he'll be a true nickel because I think they're not going to send him deep into coverage. They're not going to send, he'll play in the box, but it's going to be spy, shallow zone, man on running backs, maybe some man on tight ends if they feel like it's the right matchup. They haven't really had that role here in a while, just because they haven't had the personnel for it. I go back to first stint Jamie Collins, and I'm not saying he's going to be that player, but you look at that role where Jamie Collins, he had every assignment in the book. They didn't limit him to, well, you're going to be a run stopper between the tackles. Well, you're going to be in coverage. Well, you're going to be this. It was everything under the sun. They had him doing different things every single snap. McGrone's not that. I don't want to say he's not that talented. We haven't seen him. He could be. I think he has decent potential, but I don't think he's a guy that has to do one thing or the other. I think you can ask him to do, outside of maybe running straight downhill and taking on a guard in a third and short situation. I think it's pretty much all on the table for him. So that's really exciting. It's tough. It's generally easy because the Patriots don't change a ton of what they do historically. It's generally easy to, take a new player and say, oh, well, he'll fill this role and use a former player. We do that all the time. They're going away from that. And this is an example where it's, again, the Jamie Collins comp is sort of there, but it's tough to say, well, I think he'll be like what this player is, because they haven't had a player really with McGrone's skill set, at least in a long time. So that's exciting. And I think, the versatility is what really makes him an interesting player.
Yeah, I was watching the highlights, him in college and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's a very intriguing player, and I like his speed. And a lot of people were talking about he'd get picked a lot earlier in the draft if he didn't get injured there at the end of the year from Michigan. So, evidently, Bill Belichick thinks something because we didn't draft any linebackers, and I know pretty much most of, Patriots Nation was looking for us to add somebody there, and we didn't do that. And we added people like Mac Wilson. Another intriguing name is Jabril Peppers. What do you think the plan is for him?
Oh, I love the Jabril Peppers pickup. I've been a fan of his since Michigan. I think he's a top 3 safety of the decade in college football. Tyrann Mathieu #1, Absolutely. And then him, and then probably Clinton Dix. The thing with him, to me, there's just so much untapped potential there. Some people view him as a draft bust. He was this defensive player who was in the running to win the Heisman, top 10 pick. And then he hasn't done a ton. I think if you look at the path of his career, he gets drafted to that Browns team that ended up going 0-16, the Hugh Jackson team. Yep. Not exactly the best environment for a rookie player, right? The next year, Hugh Jackson's still there. It was kind of a mess. His third year, they bring in a new coach. There's some stability. Actually, an okay season. Then, he can't build on it because he gets traded to the Giants. He only had 2 years in Cleveland. So the first year was a mess. 0-16, Hugh Jackson. Second year, he shows some progress. Then he gets traded to the Giants. The Ben McAdoo Giants, the last year, the Ben McAdoo Giants, another very dysfunctional environment. He struggles again. They're really just playing him as a deep safety, which kind of like I just talked about with McGrone. The real value with Julius Peppers is the versatility. He can play everywhere. His first year with the Giants, he struggles. Then Joe Judge comes in 2020, and Peppers has a career year. 90 tackles. I think he was towards the top of the league leading pass breakups. He was getting after the quarterback, too. They're playing him everywhere. They're playing him at deep safety, box safety, outside corner, slot corner. They used him as an edge rusher at sometimes. He was good at it. They had him returning punts. He had a great season punt returner. He's a team captain. Like, it really feels like it's clicking. It really feels like his potential's there. Has a good start in 2021, tears his ACL. I forget if it was late September, early October. Doesn't play the rest of the season. So when he's been in a somewhat stable environment, he's been good. He's just been in really bad situations. And this is something I think people evaluate players, and, we mostly do this during the draft. Is this guy going to be good or not? Well, the college tape and the evaluation is honestly only half of the picture. It's nature versus nurture, right? If you look at, who's a better raw football player, Trevor Lawrence or Mac Jones? I still believe it's Trevor Lawrence in terms of who is the deeper toolbox. But Trevor Lawrence went to an absolute dumpster fire that was Urban Meyer's Jacksonville Jaguars. Mac Jones goes to a great situation. That's, leading into the draft, we all knew Lawrence was going to go to the Jaguars. But, you know what I mean? We didn't have that information. Or let's use Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields, tremendous talent coming out of college. I really did. He should have been the second overall pick. Justin Fields goes to Chicago. Another really, really bad situation. Mac Jones goes to New England, a great situation. Who ended up being better? So I look at Jabril, to bring it back to Jabril Peppers, right? I look at Jabril Peppers and I say, has he underachieved? Absolutely. Could he have done things better? Probably. But I look at the situations he was put in, and it was really up against him to achieve in those, to succeed in those situations. Are the current Patriots, the best landing spot? They're not like the 04 Patriots or the 14 Patriots or anything like that, but I would say pretty confidently this is the most stable team he's been on. I would say this is the best environment he's been on in his now 6-year NFL career.
Yeah.
You combine that fact with his natural ability, assuming he's, healed up well coming off the ACL tear, I think there's tremendous potential with him. I really do. I'm very excited to see what he's going to do.
Yeah, I agree for sure, man. My last question is going to be, around the AFC East. Obviously the last couple of years, the Bills, have overtaken us, in the standings there and have won the division. And this offseason, we've seen all the teams around us have been retooling, man, and, bringing in players, Tyreek Hill down, in Miami, and, the Jets with the nice draft they just had. Where do you see the Patriots this year in that pack?
So I'll work from the bottom up. I'll believe the Jets. I know everybody's saying the Jets had a good draft. I'll believe the Jets had a good draft when those players play well. We've done this too many times where the Jets win the draft and then none of the players pan out, right? So did they get objectively good players? Yeah. Let's pump the brakes and make sure again, it's the nature versus nurture thing. They'll ruin those guys. Let's be honest. It's the Jets. They'll ruin those guys. It's what they always do. Nothing against the players. I think they got good players. They've drafted players I like, and they go to the Jets, and I'm upset because then I'm like, oh, well, they're not going to have NFL careers. That sucks. I still don't think Zach Wilson's that guy. I don't. So I'm not too worried about the Jets. People are kind of trying to dunk on the Dolphins for adding all this offensive talent with Tua at quarterback. I don't think they realize what that team is going to look like. It's Mike McDaniel. It's a Shanahan-style offense. It's a horizontal offense. You're not asking the quarterback to throw the ball more than 10 yards. In Tua's deep game, like I'm a big Tua guy. I'm an Alabama fan. People talk about his arm strength. They didn't watch him at Alabama. His arm strength was tremendous. It's the hip injury. I think he's still dealing with issues from that. That's why he can't throw the deep ball. But you ask him to zip it over the middle, 7-8 yards, he's pinpoint still. That he can't do much more than that, but when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle running after the catch, you don't really need the quarterback to throw the ball more than 7 or 8 yards. And if it really doesn't work out, Teddy Bridgewater is not a horrible plan B. So if people want to dunk on Miami for their quarterback situation, the best quarterback situation in the league? No. I think people are underrating it. I think for what they want to do, if they have two deep threats, if they bring in like Devontae Adams, that's a different story. Tua can't play with that guy. He's just not going to get him the ball. Two of the best yards after the catch receivers in football? Yeah, Tua's going to be fine. When it comes to the Bills, they'll be good again. This, to me, is the last year of their window. Josh Allen's big extension kicks in after this year. Stephon Diggs turns 30 after this year. Go look up the numbers once wide receivers turn 30. They're not favorable. Some of their offensive linemen are going to start to age out. Some of their defensive players are going to start to age out. They're still a very good team. I think they're the third or fourth best team in the AFC. On paper, the best team in the AFC East. But this is it. It's now or never. And that can go one of two ways. That can go, hey, we've got to do it this year, and they get it together and they do it. They also had a rough end to last season, and they've had a really rough end in the playoffs the last 2 years. For the last 3 years, actually, if you go back to the loss to Bill O'Brien and Deshaun Watson, the Texans, and yeah, that's only 3 years ago. I know it feels like a long time ago. So we'll see. It comes down to how consistent Josh Allen can be. I think Josh Allen, when he's on, is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, but he had a 3-month stretch last year where he didn't post back-to-back games with a passer rating over 90. That's not great. Consistency is important at that position. And there's guys who can play at his level, or at least close to his, maybe not quite at his level, but close to his level, but can do it much more consistently. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, obviously, these guys that are obviously ahead of it. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers in the regular season, Tom Brady. So that's what it comes down to me. Can Josh Allen be more consistent? And what's the mental rebound like after the way that last season ended? And then do they get to favorable weather? Because we know that team can't play in that Buffalo weather. They need some help. They don't have home field advantage. So, I think the Patriots are right there neck and neck with Miami for the second best team in the AFC East. I think that game at the end of the season could be massive. I still think they're looking up at the Bills in the regular season, and then when it gets to postseason, we see how the lots fall.
My last question has nothing to do with football.
All right.
The U.S. Open was in town a couple of weeks ago. Did you get to go?
Yeah, I went Wednesday for a practice round. I didn't get to go for any of the actual rounds because I was doing the finals. But yeah, I did. That was an incredible experience. I've never been to a professional golf event before, and just getting to walk that course, man. It's, you think you go out and you play some of the more expensive public courses around here, and you're like, that was tough. And then you go out and you walk there, and it's like you're on another planet. And then to see the guys tear it up the way they did, I mean, it's unbelievable. Not that I thought I was anywhere near PGA talent, but to see some of the shots those guys hit, I mean, it's tough to even comprehend. And I know you see it on TV, but it's different in person. So that was pretty cool. And they need to bring that thing back. I know the club's not super big into it, but what just an awesome event that was.
Yeah, it just I didn't know what was gonna be in town, but when I saw the signs and there was policemen everywhere, and I was just like, wow, this is kind of big for Boston, just having that kind of event. And knowing that you're a golf enthusiast, I figured you probably went to at least one of the days.
Well, it's also cool because Boston, like right now, is really on the world stage when it comes to sports, right? You talked about how cool that event was for Boston. We had that. And then the same weekend, we find out we're getting Army Navy next year, which is going to be incredible at Gillette Stadium. Really high expectations for that event, which I think they'll meet. I think the Patriots are going to, in Boston and Providence, are going to do a tremendous job with that. Belichick
is, I don't know, he's so excited right now. He's a Navy guy. I don't know. I don't think he's beside himself right now. He must be so excited.
Well, and he's talked about in the past how much that event means to him, but, how is that going to work? It's a Saturday game. They generally don't play it with an NFL game at the same stadium the next day. It's too much turnover. So are the Patriots going to be on the road? Are they going to make a rare exception so Bill can be there? Is that a Thursday night game so Bill can come back?
Bill is going to fly that night.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be their Thursday night game next year, or their bye week. We'll be leading into that game, so Bill can be a part of it. But yeah, so we have that World Cup coming in 2026, also to Foxborough. That's going to be a great event.
Yep.
The Rugby World Cup's coming here in a few years as well. So Boston, in terms of sports, Boston's really going to be on the world stage here for the next few years. And the PGA or the U.S. Open was a great way to kick that off, and it's going to be really cool. We got, save up for tickets. We got a lot to go to these next couple of years, but it's going to be a ton of fun. And then Alabama comes to BC in 2030. So if Saban's still there,
right. It's 2030.
It's closer than you think.
You're right.
And Saban and Hafley, hopefully, both still there. That could be an event.
In 2030, we'll have you for the 15th time.
I love it. I love it.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, Alex, it's always a pleasure talking to you, man, and hearing your thoughts. And we love watching you on all the platforms and, all your ideas and insight on the team. So obviously going to keep watching you doing your thing. So you're always welcome to come back on the show. And thanks so much, man, for being here.
Appreciate it. Anytime, guys.
All right. Have a good night, man.
You too.
Yeah.
We'd like to say thank you to Alex Barth. If you want to follow him, he's on Twitter at Real Alex Barth, and he's on Patriots Press Pass. He's on put Alex Barth on YouTube, and you'll find a lot of content. And especially if you're a Patriots fan, he has a lot of insight and very knowledgeable about the team. So go follow him. Make sure you're liking and sharing this video. Make sure you're following us on social media. If you can see it behind me, we're at ProFanSports on every platform other than Instagram, and that's at ProFans_sports. So thank you for the support. Thank you for tuning in weekly. We really appreciate it. And until next week, man, that was it for today. Peace out.